Look how far we've come, all the things we've done. Did it all with love, beauty from the bottom up. All I want is you, you're my favorite view. But there's nothing more, girl, you make my heart beat.
And we are back.
We are back, bumble bitches.
And top of the morning to you. Any new shit going on, Miss Victorian era?
The kind
Duchess?
of, not really. The Duchess, thank you. I started writing my book.
Yeah. How's that going?
I'm a mess. So I know the story and I know where I'm going with it. I've done a lot of research. I know the character's name. I know the scene I want to paint before things start making you cry. But I'll write a paragraph and I'll get bored with what I'm writing and I'll go back to what I wrote previously. And then I spend 30 minutes revising what I've already written instead of just writing the story. That's something I have to work on.
Knowing that you're writing that book, are you going to get crazy detailed descriptive?
That's the goal.
So like you're going to have to create a hospital.
Yeah.
And define the hospital and every room and how many rooms and what the staff looks like and what their uniforms are and what color the paint is and what color the fucking bunks are and like.
Well, so I've already like made a precedence. So the first page and a half is a woman being in this car and it's 1963. The car, I don't have my computer in front of me. It's like a Watley something. I've described the interior of the car. I described the sound of the gravel crunching underneath the tires. Yeah. There's emerald foliage. And it starts on the scenic drive and, you know, she's enjoying the weather and the windows are down and there's a breeze happening and she thinks of a moment where her husband surprised her with something she's always wanted. And then the memory that she's having is shattered by 3 massive brick buildings that come into view. And I'm getting ready to start describing the first building, which is the smallest of the 3, as the administration/medical building where they do all the surgeries and whatnot. And there are 2 men who are going to meet her outside that first building. And they are in crisp white shirts with matching pants.
Yeah, that's a lot. You're going to have to create I would create all of that on a separate document.
Yeah.
So that you can go back and reference it without having to go through and find where you referenced it in the book.
That's a good idea.
D&D shit. I have notes for every town that I've ever created and all the stores and who they are and what they look like and all that shit so that I can just reference my notes versus trying to remember it all.
That's smart.
Yeah. So Jay said Crystal loves your dress.
Oh, thank you.
For those of you who don't know, we do record this live in front of our Patreon. All right, guys, as you know, there was a TikTok scare. We lost the app for a whole 12 hours and we have no idea what the future of the app looks like. And with that, we are very concerned about the loss of our following. We have amassed almost 3 million followers across that platform with all 4 of our accounts. And we are trying to push people to other social media platforms so that in the event that anything happens on one app, we have multiple other backup plans. If you want to make sure that you're not missing any content, we highly recommend that you check out our Patreon.
On Patreon, we have multiple tiers to choose from. Starting at $10, you begin to receive exclusive content. At $15 a month, you get access to our private Discord server where we've amassed an absolutely amazing community of supportive people. And beyond that, we have other tiers to check out, along with my 2 private women's group, if that's something you may be interested in.
Guys, on our $15 and higher tier, you have access to live recordings. We record all of our content 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, live in front of our Patreon audience where they are able to chat with us while we're recording. They can see all the flirting, the outtakes, the hot topic conversations that never actually make it on the podcast. And it's really worth that aspect in itself. We have an After Dark where we sit down usually once a week and have a glass of bourbon or in Peach's case, a glass of wine and a bowl of cheese. And we have a whole lot of fun conversations, karaoke in the Discord. We finish the lyrics. We literally just hang out and you guys get to hang out with us. There is a host of other perks, including Zoom calls that are coming for the ultimate tier. So that if you guys are having problems, you can talk to us. It also gives you the heads up on private meet and greets because when we travel, we try to meet up with people on our Discord on a regular basis. There's a whole slew of other perks that come through Patreon. I highly recommend that you check it out.
The best way to support what we are doing is to share the content. The second best way is to check out our Patreon. Thank you guys for being here.
Today we will be doing articles We saved one from the person that wrote the article last week, which was a really good article. We saved a piece of content because we were going to do it last week and ran out of time.
Yeah.
So we have that. Do you want to just jump into that and get that going?
We can.
Okay. This one's called 5 Subtle Signs You Experienced a Rough Childhood. How these behaviors can fly under the radar if you aren't looking for them.
Some may look back on their early years with fond memories of family and friends, neighborhood block parties, and feeling safe and secure in your own bed at night. For others, we grew up living in survival mode where fight or flight became the norm. We may have learned to sleep with one eye open and alert to the first sign of danger. We may have faked being asleep to avoid dealing with our caregiver. Growing up in inconsistent, unpredictable, and violent conditions has a way of teaching a person just how to survive the elements. Yet for some, the elements, in quotations, aren't about surviving Mother Nature. They're based on getting through another night with an abusive caregiver who's taken their hatred of themselves and the world out on you.
I'm gonna pause. I was watching something this morning from the Healthy Gamer GG on YouTube. Mm-hmm. He's a psychiatrist that does YouTube shit. And he said on there, the guy that he was interviewing was Dr. Honda. And Dr. Honda said that sometimes avoidant attachment styles come from feeling unsafe as a child. And that unsafe could be something as simple as being dropped off at daycare, coming home and telling your parents that like you were bullied or you had a really bad experience there and your parents not giving you enough of time and recognition of what was happening throughout your day, that you learned to start avoiding those things because of all of that.
Wow.
And that triggered that thought for me. So I'm just putting that out there for you guys as we're going to be reading things that you need to deep dive your psyche to figure out why the fuck you are the way you are. That could be one of those things. Just saying.
That was a good thing to add into there.
Yeah.
While most of us can nod along in seeing the obvious red flags that someone grew up having a bad childhood, such as them developing narcissistic behavior or a taste for drugs or alcohol, there are other less obvious behaviors that also shine a light on how a person may have been raised in an unhealthy environment. All right, here we go. The list begins. I'm ready to get my feelings hurt.
Okay.
Hyperindependence or hyperdependence. People who are overly independent and are often scared of being on their own, as crazy and As crazy and counterintuitive as it sounds, many of these people grew up in conditions where they had to fend for themselves and did not have a solid, consistent, or reliable caregiver in which to turn. They may have had to make their own school lunches as a small child and get themselves to and from school. They may have had to learn how to wash their own clothes and care for their parent or caregiver who was on the other end of the spectrum in being hyper-dependent. Some may have been booted out of their house at 18 years old, as their siblings may have been, and learned through the school of hard knocks how the world works. On the flip side are those who grew up being taught that they were worthless. They may have been physically abused as a young child, or old not knowing how to make the bed, and may have been harshly verbally abused for being in their parents' way. As such, they may have grown up learning to hide from their caregiver, from being seen or told they're a burden, and from the world that proved intimidating and frightening. Many who experienced this dynamic grew up being totally reliant on their caregivers for everything while being shamed for not being taught how to care for themselves and for having basic needs.
That's how I view a trauma bond.
Oh, wow. I just learned something about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I experienced all of that. Do you think that I am hyper independent or hyper dependent?
I would say you're like 40-60. 40% in hyper independent and then 60% hyper dependent. Continuing on, they become ill-prepared for adulthood, looking to others to fix, rescue, save them from their abusive childhood that stole their autonomy and their ability to be a functional adult. They became vulnerable for the white knight narcissist who swoops in to rescue them, only to find out that they have another toxic agenda. To anyone unfamiliar with these red flags, they may look like someone is just independent, or they may look at the person needing help as romanticizing it and coming in as the caretaker and savior. Yet, a closer look reveals that on one end, the hyper-independent person usually had to grow up fast, while on the other end, the hyper-dependent person usually grew up alone and without being taught any life skills.
That's why. So when I asked you that, you said I was 40% hyper independent and 60. See, and I would have viewed myself the other way because I am very much, just fucking do it myself.
Yeah.
Like it's so much easier than asking for help. And I've never viewed myself as a dependent person.
Yeah.
Weird that you said that. I guess it's perspective. We'll have to have a conversation after the podcast because I'm not ready for that to be a public conversation. But I'll remember because I'm gonna be editing. So.
Yeah. Disordered eating. Oh, yep. Okay. What some may not know is how growing up in poverty can affect your adult life. What was conditioned as normal in a person's childhood, such as flipping a coin to see who gets to eat dinner, or strong-arming their siblings so they can have an extra bite of their brother's dinner, is not typical behavior. Yet, some people grew up in these environments not realizing that they were below what the government identifies as the poverty threshold. These people grow up having an unhealthy relationship with food. They may become excessively fast eaters and barely chew their food before inhaling another bite. Or they may binge to eat to the point of sickness because they have never experienced feeling full in their childhood.
People do that with their emotional attachments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many live in extreme guilt where they overstock their refrigerators out of fear of going back where they came from. Others may overspend by hundreds of dollars on lavish food as a way of validating their ego and ego needs. On the flip side, some may have grown up with a mommy dearest caregiver who demanded they ate everything on their plate before being allowed to get up from the dinner table. They were often harshly and punitively punished and shamed, force-fed, and physically abused unless they ate their entire dinner, leaving nothing but the plate remaining.
Pause. So I understand everything that this is saying about the not getting up before you finish your plate.
Mm-hmm.
There is an argument to be made about allowing a child to make their own plate and then letting them go back for seconds because they didn't put enough on it. I think that it teaches portion control. It can not waste food. There's a whole lot of things that go there. If you are somebody who has picky eater kids and you're putting a whole bunch of shit on their plate and they're not eating it, there's a problem. Like you've put too much there. Our kids are about to be 7 and 6. They're 5 and 6 right now.
Yeah.
I think that that's something, because that's a great little segue into a conversation we should have.
Okay.
I think moving forward, they should be allowed to make their own plate. And I think that we should teach them to put less on, because it's a whole lot easier to go get seconds and thirds than it is to try to force someone to eat their entire plate if they're not feeling hungry enough to do so.
Right.
Or they don't like it. And I think that teaches discipline. It teaches your eyes not being bigger than your stomach.
Yeah.
And it also teaches that it's okay to take your time. You know what I mean? Like if you want to slow eat, it's okay to do that. If you're watching television while eating your dinner, it's going to take you longer to eat your dinner if you're engrossed in the television, especially at 6 and 7 years old.
Right.
So what looks like a whole lot of food to them, and like in the beginning doesn't look like a lot of food, and they're like, I can eat all this. And they sit down and they eat like, half of their dinner, and they've been watching TV. That food's had time to set. That chemical release in the brain of ghrelin says, hey, I've been satiated.
Yeah.
I don't need to continue pumping this ghrelin into the body anymore. We're going to stop eating now. And then they're looking at their food and like, I'm not hungry anymore, when they could have probably eaten all of that.
Right.
But them forcing themselves to eat all of that because it tastes good could also lead to a food thing. There's a whole lot that goes into that food shit. That's not an easy conversation. There is a lot to break down when it comes to the way that we are taught food.
Yep. Continuing on.
Yep.
They too often develop an unhealthy relationship with food. Sometimes obsessively counting calories, while other times binge eating to the point of physical illness. Some may struggle with weight problems, while others obsessively control their weight and everything in their lives.
And some do both. Especially, sorry, Belle, if they start bodybuilding. You have an unhealthy obsession with food or problems with food, and you get into the fitness industry in any capacity and understand what food is, you then develop an entirely new eating disorder. And like you eat like a bodybuilder because it's your goal. And when that stops and you go back to normal dieting, you fucking balloon up like crazy because you've been going from one extreme to another. And it does create a whole lot of unhealthy food habits. Yeah, that's a fucking problem.
Yeah. The one common element these two extremes share is a lack of moderation and consistency, where growing up in these conditions becomes an all or nothing an all or nothing relationship with food. Is this from the same doctor?
It is.
This article is very poorly written.
Is it?
There's so many different typos. Punctuation's wrong.
Maybe this was an older article.
Maybe.
Oh no, I scrolled. Where were we? Oh, right here.
To an unsuspecting eye, these patterns may look little more than someone who is a foodie or someone who is watching their waistline. Yet to a trained eye, these kinds of behaviors are red flashing lights that someone grew up in poverty or in an abusive situation surrounding food. Hyper aware of their environment. Anyone who grew up in an unpredictable environment knows that the number one thing we do is watch. We watch the people around us. We watch where we are in crowds. We look for exit strategies just in case. We know where the exit signs are on the mall, the venue, and the concert amphitheater in case of an emergency. We sit with our back to the wall at restaurants so we have the bird eye views of others. We know alternate routes on the highway and have studied the back roads and mastered them. And we respond with precision accuracy in an emergency with lightning flash reflexes.
I have no trauma.
Yeah.
None of that's a thing.
That doesn't apply to you.
No, not even a little.
These are all subtle signs of someone who grew up in a volatile, toxic, abusive, and unpredictable environment where we had to prepare for anything. And as adults, we may become the planners, the survivalists, and the ones with a bug-out bag ready in a moment's notice. Are you laughing because you're uncomfortable?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's not me at all. None of that applies to me even a little.
Yeah. While it is healthy to be aware of your environment, for anyone who grew up in a highly volatile environment, they take watching and planning to the next level. They are obsessive about examining other people's behaviors, looking for the first sign of danger, and being prepared just in case. You want to go on to the next one?
I hate everything about that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I always thought that was just about me being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never once contributed any of that to trauma until we started making TikToks. Mm-hmm. And when we made TikTok, somebody made a comment about how exhausting it must be to live like that. And it's not exhausting. It's just the way I live my life. It's fucking normal to me.
Yeah.
But hearing all of that, like that, I mean, I am that to a T.
You are. Hey guys, little quick interruption. If you're enjoying the content, please leave a like. And also don't forget to comment. We enjoy interacting with you guys and hearing your opinions, and it helps the algorithm.
It's also free to do. And if you really want to help make sure the show continues to do, hit the subscribe button and share the content across your social medias. It costs you nothing and it greatly helps the show.
Next is inconsistent boundaries. For a person who grew up in a toxic environment, they don't know what boundaries are, often because they had their own boundaries violated. Boundary violations are along a spectrum, from being barged in on in the bathroom while taking a shower to more extreme conditions where a militaristic parent routinely and unpredictably would go through your belongings. Yet, there are more subtle boundary violations such as taking a person's belongings without asking, or not taking subtle hints that a person is uninterested in continuing a conversation. What all boundary violations teach a person is, I don't matter. Diving deeper, this can go one of two common ways. Either the person continues having shoddy boundaries around others in their life, or they develop such rigid and strict boundaries that they are unrealistic and punitive.
So all of this also happened in my childhood, but I don't have an issue with boundaries.
Yeah.
Do I?
I think sometimes you do.
Let's talk about that after the podcast too.
Yeah. A deeper dive often reveals that for anyone who grew up feeling violated or not being allowed their own space, they are often overly rigid with their boundaries around many in their lives, and often allow those closest to them, partner, best friend, to violate what little boundaries they have established for themselves. Easily overstimulated or understimulated.
Yeah, those 5.
The reality is, anyone who grew up with high levels of screaming, yelling, or chaos in their lives may become an adult who values peace and quiet. They may shudder in loud crowds, throw their hands over their ears if someone is talking too loudly, learn to go to the movie theater with earplugs, and dine out during off hours at restaurants to limit how much noise is around them. They typically opt for the tranquility of a day spa instead of going to loud, noisy, and polluted ball games. They chose a solitary nature hike over a large group hike. They find themselves preferring an intimate evening with their partner instead of a dank and crowded bar scene. They value their space, their privacy, and quiet moments where they can create connections with those in their lives. They choose to surround themselves with people who understand that they have different needs, to be understood, accepted, and not judged for requiring serenity in their lives. These people grew up as the at-risk kids, yet many slip between every crack. They may have hid behind a textbook and gotten straight A's to distract themselves from their pain. Teachers may have not known what red flags to look for since they weren't pulling fire alarms, or causing problems, and instead wanted to disappear in the back of the classroom.
They may have been called shy by their teachers and socially awkward or a nerd by their peers. If a person grew up around this chaos and disarray, it is not uncommon that they now require a level of peaceful structure to help them safely navigate their world. On the flip side, some may have grown up around chaos, screaming and yelling, and learned by proxy to get or keep a person's attention they had to be the biggest and loudest person in the room. Case in point, some may develop booming, overly loud, and obnoxious voices that vie for other people's attention. They may talk over others. They may be so brash and loud that others naturally pause and look when hearing them speak. These people also grew up as an at-risk kid. They were the ones being sent to the principal's office, or they were the dropout who ran amok with the wrong crowd. A deeper look into why they resort in this behavior often discloses a toxic, abusive, or negligent home environment where it was everyone for themselves. In this situation, each person's trauma spilled over to the next in line, creating a cesspool where everyone tried staying afloat by grabbing onto another for attention, validation, or love. If a person grew up around chaos, disarray, or it's equally common that they now become the center of attention from having been conditioned to vie for attention in their earlier lives. While these experiences can be a challenge to healing, they do not prevent it. If you are recognizing that you may be struggling with any of these more subtle signs of an unhealthy childhood, it is important to examine how they may be impacting your romantic relationships. That's a lot, because a lot of that shit was my childhood. There's a lot there that speaks directly to what I went through. And a lot of that, like my trauma is all 5 of those.
Yeah.
But I definitely think the biggest one was the hyper aware of their environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last 3 were probably the most prominent in my life.
Yeah.
And I would have paused if I thought that burp was coming. It came out of nowhere. This one is called Understanding Impulsivity and Emotional Withdrawal and Borderline. Okay. Fuck this article already.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I might cry and apologize.
The impulsivity is real. Trigger warning. This article talks candidly about painful experience of living with borderline personality disorder, which may be triggering for some. While the goal is to educate and support, some may find the examples provided or the information presented as triggering. Yay. As a behavioral psychologist and certified trauma and relationship specialist, I have worked with many people over the last couple of decades. I have shared my own lived experience and shared my clients' laughter and tears with their joys and challenges. I have worked with many different populations, yet they all encompass one overarching theme, and that is trauma. Trauma comes in many forms. For some, we may jump right to thinking of physical trauma or the outcome of physical injury that a person is now having to navigate or live with. For others, such as clients I work with, trauma surrounds more emotionally and overwhelming events that have shattered their stability and created lasting negative effects on their psychological, emotional, and physical health. Yes, these can include physical injury or illness that has caused restrictions for them and changed the trajectory of their life. When I think of trauma, I don't ever think injury. I always think mental. Because if I'm talking about an injury, I would call it an injury. Unless we're saying like blunt force trauma.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, when I think of trauma, I think of the psyche.
Yeah, same. For others, it may include a childhood filled with chaos, neglect, unpredictability, violence, poverty, inconsistent boundaries with caregivers, living in a home where they felt unseen, unheard, or substance abuse within the home. Still, others may have histories that include polyvictimization, such as living with the effects of multiple traumatic experiences, such as social injustice and substance abuse in the home, or experiencing repeated abuse, neglect, and abandonment from caregivers. Or D, all of the above.
Yeah, I'm learning stuff about me today.
Somebody in the chat said PTSD causes physical trauma too. The reality is that trauma does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, what you look like, how old you are, what degree you hold, or what you do for a living. One of the most common effects of trauma for many, especially when it begins in the formative years, is borderline personality disorder, BPD. BPD is a response to chronic and repeated trauma or neglect, particularly when the emotional wounding starts in childhood. These experiences shape how you see yourself and how you see others. It shapes your worldview about how the world is supposed to work and how your relationship should play out. This is your parents being the people who are supposed to direct and prepare you for life, fucking you up to the point where you think all of this shit is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Anything?
No.
Okay. If you have a history of mental illness in your family or experience betrayal, abuse, abandonment, or emotional neglect from your caregiver, I don't know why I struggle with that one, you are predisposed to developing BPD. Where was I?
When caregivers are neglectful or mentally unstable.
They aren't looking at their child's healthy emotional development as being on the line. They are only concerned about meeting their own needs. Early and chronic maltreatment does not just shape your thoughts and beliefs, it teaches you to look for agendas within people in your life. And that loving someone inevitably leads to betrayal or abandonment. For example, a couple of decades ago, parents who dismissed and neglected their child's needs turned to the electronic babysitter, where they would plunk their kids down in front of a television for hours watching TV shows or playing video games so it could free up the parents' time to do what they wanted. This is a form of emotional neglect, especially if the child's parents allowed them to tune out for hours without showing any interest in their life or their emotional needs. This is the video game kid.
Yeah.
Since the 80s, this is the video game kid.
Yep. I remember growing up and I would come home from school and sit in front of the TV. And then it would be conversations of, oh, you're home. What's for dinner?
Yeah.
And it didn't really go beyond that.
This is why I didn't let little man play video games last night.
Yeah.
Yep. I want that to be
you earn it.
and a reward, not a obligation or a
you get to do it because we have it.
Right. I don't want it to become normal. The idea of sitting, if you have a kid or you are somebody who can sit and play video games for 8 to 12 hours a day every single day, you have a whole lot more going on there than simple addiction to video games. Like you are looking for an escape.
Yeah.
You know, and when it starts with young kids not having the attention span to do something for more than 15 to 20 minutes, them playing video games for 6 to 8 hours at a time is also very problematic. That would show that there are signs of addictive personalities even at a young age. Nowadays, television has been replaced with iPads and other electronic devices that babysit a kid, leaving them with the same inevitable risk of emotional neglect. I believe that 100%. Other kids were, I just had a whole thing of kids melting down over the tablets being taken.
Yeah.
That looks like the anxiety of a parent leaving. Anybody that had kids before technology, or if you've ever had a really emotionally attached child and you've had to drop them off at a babysitter or drop them off at the other parent and there's that screaming, crying, I don't want you to leave. That's what that is. And it literally, them calling it an electronic babysitter, it literally is the exact same thing. That emotional attachment to that need. Damn. That was a whole epiphany that just happened as I was in seconds.
Yeah.
Other kids were raised with an iron fist and cruel verbal abuse. If you experienced this, you likely had narcissistic and mentally unstable caregivers who were dismissive of your emotional needs and careless with your physical safety. All of the above. What you learn from growing up in this dynamic is to be hypervigilant with everyone in your surroundings, always scanning your environment for the first sign of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. These early traumatic experiences teach you the basics of Trauma 101. Not only can trauma rewire your brain for survival mode, it rewires how you relate to people. This rewiring is based on feelings of constant threat, where you learn to be hypervigilant around everyone in your life and one step ahead. You watch and wait for the other shoe to drop, and you become alert to the smallest nuances or changes in someone's demeanor or attitude towards you. You learn to notice people's behavior and internalize any changes in their behavior as something being wrong with you.
That's so hard for me.
Why?
To not do that.
Oh yeah, to not do it.
Yeah.
That's what we've talked about this whole time about people pleasing and like to be, as long as your abuser is okay, you're okay and you feel safe in that moment because you're just trying to get through. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. Do you have anything else? You want me to keep going?
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. The cycle of impulsivity. The cycle of impulsivity and withdrawal. Fears of abandonment and rejection are the driving forces behind impulsive behavior seen in borderline. When examining impulsive behavior, we have to look at the context with behaviors that are aligned with the disorder thinking and emotions, not something menial like arbitrarily updating your hairstyle or deciding to repaint your home. I'm going to pause real quick. I read an article a long time ago that said that people that rearrange their furniture all the time or are constantly changing their environment, that's a sign of a deranged mind, that you have something going on mentally and you're not okay and you're looking for busy work to like placate that. With the advent of doom scrolling, that's changed because people are less likely to physically do something now that they can do this.
Yeah.
But I was that kid that rearranged my room constantly.
Oh yeah, at least once a month.
When it comes to impulsivity and BPD, any skilled therapist in understanding disorder behavior will examine the function or what is motivating the person to engage in the impulsive behaviors. Typically, what motivates a person to act impulsively is based on dual function. On the other hand, you are trying to escape or avoid something that is causing you extreme emotional distress, such as believing someone is going to abandon you. On the other hand, you're turning to something, the impulsive behavior, that offers you momentary relief with more pain in the aftermath. That's the self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Chat's going, look, I'm tired of whoever wrote this. This is what happens when you find articles written by actual psychologists, guys. When your emotions become too overwhelming, you may react without thinking. These snap decisions are always based on survival mode, where you have this momentary rush of feeling in control over the situation and impulsively acting on it. The irony is that once you act on these impulsive behaviors, there is an immediate regret that you are now living with. Regrets are always equally emotionally charged, where you can withdraw out of the feeling of shame, guilt, and even desperation. It is the emotional aftermath of the impulsive behavior that completes the cycle and leave you with feelings of deep emptiness and shame.
That's kind of been like the last month for me.
I know it has. I've watched it. I've watched you cycle over the last month. I really think that we needed this weekend that we just took. The downtime was necessary. I think that we were both, burning the candle at both ends, and it finally caught up to us.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I'm like this.
We're both like this. There's nothing to be sorry about. We're navigating a hard fucking existence, and we're doing the best we can. I think we're nailing it.
Yeah.
Just because we have a rough couple of days, months, but it comes to a boil and spills over a couple of days at a time. It's not a bad thing. There was something in here that said these snap decisions are always based on survival mode, where you have this momentary rush of feeling in control over the situation and impulsively acting on it. This is the react versus respond. I taught our son a breathing technique where you take 2 really deep breaths through your nose and then exhale all of your air forcefully through your mouth. And that 2 deep breaths, when you say that, people are like, how do you do that? You take a deep breath and you pause for a second and take another deep breath until your lungs are full as a motherfucker, and then exhale that shit. That is intentional breathing, because we breathe without thinking about it. It's automated. Mm-hmm. Taking a deep breath is a choice. Most of the time we are consciously making an effort to make a deep breath. Doing that double deep breath and exhale, the conscious breathing actually reduces anxiety. So if you're in a situation where you're getting ready to react and you need a second, that double deep breath and exhale could be enough for you to pause for a minute, think about what you want to say, and then respond versus engaging in conflict. Good? Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. For example, you may have a friend who tried to provide you emotional support after your partner broke up with you. But instead of allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your friend, you may impulsively lash out at them or shut down and push them away out of fears of being further rejected or abandoned. At that moment, it feels safer to avoid the possibility of being abandoned by someone else while experiencing emotional overwhelm from your breakup. Yet the flood of regret, shame, and sadness usually hits you shortly after your impulsive actions, leaving you with even more destabilizing emotions that can spiral you into a state of withdrawal and feelings of deep emptiness, which then leads to isolation, which then leads to depression, and then the cycle fucking repeats itself. Mm-hmm. And with somebody who has borderline, where that extreme up and extreme down is very prevalent, the moment you meet somebody or you find a favorite person that you can latch onto that gives you a little bit of light in that darkness, you latch and they become your favorite person, and they're your favorite person until something happens. And then this continues. And this is that cycle. And this is why most people who have borderline don't last for more than 2 years in a relationship. Jack Attack said, Chris talking about breathing got me on manual breathing for a moment.
Yeah, made me aware of my breathing too.
Yeah, here's something to think about. All of you need to sit up. You fucking shrimp. Yeah, Carrie said, damn, Daniel sat up. Okay. Anything on that before I move on?
I like that we're beating the statistic when it comes to borderline and being in a relationship.
Me too. There's a lot of healing that has to happen. And there's a lot. You talk about grace in the relationship constantly. You talk about grace in the relationship constantly. That shit is hard. It's really fucking hard to give somebody grace when you want to punch them in the face or you're splitting and you fucking hate them in the moment. There's a lot of self-control and like discipline that comes into going, I need 5 minutes so that I don't break your neck. Like,
yeah, a lot of reminders of I love this person.
Right. Bad moment, not a bad life.
That just made it sound like you fucking hate me sometimes.
No, I hate the situation. That's my growth. Because old me would have absolutely hated you at times. I don't. I hate what you're going through now. It's not you. It's what you're going through. And with that understanding, that allows me, that change of logic of I hate her to I hate what she's going through has allowed me to give you grace and everything. I don't get bothered when you have bad days anymore, unless you're being shitty to me. Because when you start being shitty to me, I take it personal. Like I need to work on that still. Because I know that you're not doing it intentionally. It's not an intentional fuck you because I know you're going through it. You just got a $50 woman on the women's group.
Oh, dope.
But that is self-awareness. That is, I've lived through what you're going through. And because I've lived through that, I have an understanding, which is when you were like, hey, I think I'm splitting towards you. I was like, well, that really fucking sucks to hear. And I was able to hold you instead of being like, you hate me? Fuck you, bitch. Like, right? So I'm just gonna, right? I deserve a pat on my back for all of the work that I've been given and doing and like the work that you've done and the way that we've been able to work, because a lot of people that have the shit that we have would not be able to deal with the things that we do, because there is a lot of having to step back and going, this isn't personal. She doesn't hate me. She's not leaving. I'm not leaving. And her abandonment of wanting, like believing I'm going to leave is not because she's looking for a way out. Right? Like she's not self-sabotaging our relationship because she doesn't love me anymore. That's a thing.
Really?
It is a thing. That's my abandonment. When you start feeling abandoned, I have to go, is she trying to like, is she about to really start doing me dirty so that I'll be the one to break up with her? Like this is a fucking mess up here.
Our minds are fucking crazy.
It is. But that's because of our abusers. Yeah. And I'm not going to allow my abusers to continue to fuck up my life. They did that enough when I was little. I'm in control now. I'm in the fucking driver's seat, and I like going fast. We may have to avoid obstacles at high speeds from time to time, but this shit's exciting.
That's a good way to put that.
Similarly.
Is
that my subtool?
Maybe.
Similarly, you may engage in reckless and impulsive spending, retail therapy, as a way of trying to cope with feelings, emptiness, and emotional withdrawal. Or you're looking for a dopamine response because guilty. It is very common for a person with BPD to seek outside validation for the emptiness they are feeling inside. This momentary validation can come from buying themselves expensive things, clothes, cars, or technology. Guilty. Investing in expensive memberships or frivolously changing their appearance for aesthetic reasons. Yet, when you turn to the outside world and try to fill an interval sense of emptiness, you're left with a momentary high followed by more feelings of emptiness and regret. So I that's me on all of it except for the regret, because the regret doesn't really happen except for in cars. Like normally when I buy expensive shit, I don't feel bad about it. Like I'm not like I shouldn't have done that. When it comes to the car thing, I absolutely do that shit.
I disagree with you on that.
Really?
I have heard so many times I shouldn't have bought that. I regret buying that.
Really?
This was useless for me to buy.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I know I do it with cars.
Yeah. It's
but I
more than that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Damn. Why you gotta call me out? The article's doing it now. You're doing it too.
I mean, I could just sit here and not say nothing.
I appreciate the honesty. You know what though? You're right, because I can look at things in our house and be like, I've never used this. I bought it thinking I needed it, like I wanted it, and I was chasing that dopamine, and then I start seeing the dollar signs of everything that I've spent on all that shit. Backpacks are different though. The
sunglasses from Vegas.
That was definitely a bullshit purchase.
Yeah.
So if those glasses would have done what I wanted them to do, and I would have been able to wear them while playing poker, I'd have been totally good with it.
Yeah.
The problem is once I put them on, I couldn't see my fucking cards. However, those sunglasses look gangster as fuck during that photo shoot. And I don't regret them anymore.
They did look really good.
Does that negate that purchase because like I feel good about it now? Because I look like a fucking boss in that photo shoot. I'm fucking with them glasses.
Okay.
If I wasn't a ginger and the sun didn't hurt my eyes the way that it did, I would wear them all the time. The problem is they go dark to light.
A gradient.
And I don't want to drive around like this.
Right.
And my Oakleys are big as shit, so I can do that.
Cover the whole eyeball.
Yeah. You're right though. I do get to the point where I start seeing the dollar signs that were wasted on things.
Yeah.
But I've always viewed that as chasing a dopamine hit because that dopamine makes me feel good in the moment. I've also realized that I get the same thing from window shopping and learning.
Okay.
Like the Hasselblad camera that I've wanted has been like a month and a half of stupidity with that camera. And like I got verbal about it about a month ago. But there was already a week or two of me digging into that and looking into like what the camera system is because it's an off-brand camera. Like it's not a Canon, Nikon, or Sony. But the amount of learning that went into that and understanding why that's such a cool thing gave me 3 weeks of dopamine and want, obviously. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because you do all of that research and you just end up spending the money anyway.
I didn't spend the money this time.
I mean, you're still getting what you want.
Yeah.
You're right. You didn't spend the money this time, but it always ends with you getting the thing.
A lot of the times it does. But I mean, that's work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
I can't take it with me. You know what I mean? But there is definitely like the amount of times that I've added shit. So you don't see this. I add shit to the Amazon cart all the fucking time.
I believe it.
And then I remove it all the fucking time. Like I have an entire list under my cart of like probably $100,000 worth of shit that I want to buy that I don't. So at least there is some impulse control there. Like there are things that I really need to buy that I don't want to spend the money on and I wait. But I also will get a dopamine high from buying your chocolates.
Yeah.
So like on days that I need that little like pick me up, I get a twofold because I know you're going to be happy about it, but I get to spend a little bit of money and like I get excited knowing that you're going to open that box and be like, oh babe, I love you.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is great. That's a total win that's a lot of wins for me. And it wins for you too because you enjoy it.
I do.
So in romantic relationships, impulsive behaviors can be especially damaging and lead you to overwhelming feelings of shame and regret. For example, you may impulsively break up with your partner and immediately look for the replacement when they ask for time to themselves to process something they are going through. Did I skip a line?
No.
Immediately look for a replacement when they, for example.
Oh, so in response to them saying that they're processing something and they need space or like I need 3 hours to myself, the reaction is to break up with them and look for a replacement.
Okay. Instead of looking at the situation as your partner vulnerably approaching you and asking for time to sort through their own pain, you internalize their needing times to themselves as rejection and abandoning of you. That was the first time you were like, then why are we together? And I was like, did you ever fucking say that to me again?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what that was. There's a whole lot there to break down. I'm not going to. Do you have anything on that or should I just keep going?
Just keep going.
In time, the impulsive decision to leave may be followed by cognitive dissonance. Love that word. Shame, regret, and emptiness in questioning yourself if you made the right decision to leave as you withdraw into your own inner world. I love you. I hate you. Don't leave me. I love you. I hate you. Don't leave me. Go away, come back. Go away, come back. Go away, come back. That's exactly what that is. And that was my life, probably the first 3/4 of it. It took a long time to not be like that. And it took a whole lot of self-reflection. Like this really is a me problem. Emotional withdrawal can take on many forms, including disassociating into binge watching television or video games, avoiding conversations or keeping them to a couple of texts, or turning down social engagements as too exhausting and triggering. Internally, you may feel intense emotions such as anger, anxiety, depression, and shame. On the outside, you may come across as moody, aloof, or indifferent to the people in your life. Adding fuel to the fire is that your outward behavior may confuse or insult others who may think they did something to cause you to push them away or shut down, creating the potential for more instability within your relationship. That's where the splitting starts. And that's why people go, my partner's so hot and cold. There's days that they love me and they're very passionate. And the next day they're giving me the cold shoulder. I don't understand what the fuck is going on. That's that. Once the emotional shutdown starts, it's common to engage in self-sabotaging behaviors as a way of trying to cope with deep-seated feelings of emptiness. That was is she trying to blow up our relationship right now?
Yeah.
You may turn to food as emotional comfort when you notice a pattern of binge eating when feeling numb, or you may turn to booze as drugs as a way of feeling of trying to feel anything other than emptiness. Before I move any further, this is also why promiscuity is so prevalent with people who have borderline, because it's not just drugs and alcohol. It also goes to risky sexual behavior and self-harm. Mm-hmm. Some may turn to compulsive gym routines and get hooked on the exercise high as a way of trying to feel anything other than disconnected, while others may feel further shut down into a safe state of quasi-disassociation where they spend their day trying to avoid any interaction with others. The emptier you feel, the more inclined you can be to engage in self-sabotaging behavior. When you avoid your emotions by engaging in impulsive behavior and then emotionally shutting down and withdrawing, it can affect your self-awareness, your level of emotional maturity, and your self-identity. Engaging in this kind of cycle, all or nothing, which is fucking me, makes it difficult to integrate your true thoughts and feelings into healthy patterns. You end up shortchanging yourself by acting on your emotions and then shutting them off out of shame. This ultimately leads to emotional disconnecting from your relationship to prevent the cycle from repeating. That shutting your emotions off, when I've told people that I can do that, they're always like, you're a sociopath. Borderline and sociopaths kind of like have a crossover, so do narcissists. Mm-hmm. But people have always been like, you can't do that. I'm like, watch me, motherfucker. I'll burn this whole world down and go and eat a corn on the cob. Like, I don't give a fuck. It's very easy for that. Can you read that paragraph, please? Because I got hung up on the withdrawal thing as I was reading it a second time. Okay. And I lost the beginning of it, but I feel like there's something really important there, and I'm not retaining it.
When you avoid your emotions by engaging in impulsive behavior and then emotionally shutting down and withdrawing, it can affect your self-awareness, your level of emotional maturity, and your self-identity. Engaging in this kind of cycle of all or nothing makes it difficult to integrate your true thoughts and feelings into healthy patterns. You end up shortchanging yourself by acting on your emotions and then shutting them off out of shame. This ultimately leads to emotional disconnection from your relationship to prevent the cycle from repeating. Oh, I might be doing that right now.
What do you mean?
Ignoring emotions to prevent the cycle from repeating.
Got to work through shit.
Yeah. I'm trying to. It just seems so far there's not a solution to it besides me just fucking being upset about it.
Yeah. Well, that could speak to accepting what you can't change, changing what you can, and the wisdom to know the difference kind of thing.
Accepting the things that I can't change makes me want to throw up every single morning, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to continue to live with the way that I'm feeling.
Okay, so the next piece says overcoming the cycle. As with anything, the first step in healing is, maybe this will help you with what you're going through.
Maybe.
The first step in healing is always self-awareness. Without awareness into your patterns, it's damn near impossible to reach the second step of authentic accountability for how these unhealthy patterns may have affected your growth and your relationships. Patience is also a necessary skill to learn in the healing process. All too often, people want to see immediate improvement and change. This is understandable. If you are living with borderline personality disorder, the emotional roller coaster can take its toll on you and your relationship sooner than later. It's natural to want to see things improve immediately. However, it is not realistic. Healing from any maladaptive pattern requires you to examine each of your choices as you make them and reflect on whether they were healthy or not for yourself, and this takes time. Yet the hardest part of healing is not seeing your patterns or in taking accountability for how these patterns have replayed in your life. It's not even the patience that needs to be learned throughout the process. The hardest part for many is the wreckage you may have left in the wake of living in survival mode and learning to forgive yourself. The irony is that many have to learn to come to terms with the reality that they have hurt people who have loved them and cared for them because they were so hyper-fixated on protecting themselves from being hurt. Eventually, you learn to understand that underneath the pattern of impulsive behavior and subsequent emotional withdrawal is fear. Fear that you are going to be left behind, fear that you are going to be forgotten, fear that you will never be accepted for who you are, and fear of not knowing or appreciating yourself. But once you face these fears, they lose their power over you. So in the event that it is a fear thing for you, none of that shit's real.
Yeah.
I'm fucking here for the long haul, babe. Like, I don't know if that's what's going on, but
yeah,
if it is, I got you. Like, you don't have reason to be afraid.
I appreciate that.
that is 1 hour minus the quick cut where Carrie had to jump in. Do you want to take a quick break and then jump into the episode?
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode of the readings. For those of you who are currently on Patreon, stay tuned for a link coming up in the Discord because we're going to jump into episode 13 of season 3 where we do emails.
Hey guys, little quick interruption. If you're enjoying the content, please leave a like. And also don't forget to comment. We enjoy interacting with you guys and hearing your opinions, and it helps the algorithm.
It's also free to do. And if you really want to help make sure the show continues to do, hit the subscribe button and share the content across your social medias. It costs you nothing and it greatly helps the show. With that being said, guys, remember you are the authors of your own life.
So grab a pen.
And we will see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.